Hey, welcome back. By now you know that I am pretty much a stereotypical high school history teacher. I also coach, I teach history, those things seem to go hand in hand, but it's clear I have a love of sports. And with that, I'm fascinated how we as sports fans often believe that the era of sports that we grow up watching are our favorites. And not just that they're our favorites, we think it's the best the sport has ever been. Like, for example, me growing up throughout the late 90s into the early 2000s into now where basketball is today, I love this version of basketball. There's more scoring, there's more shooting. I think it's the best way it's ever been played. But people like my parents or those in the generation older than me would say that the 80s, the time of the Showtime Lakers and Bird Celtics, that was when basketball was at its peak. Regardless, the heroes of basketball or football or baseball or even history in general are remembered for certain reasons. And oftentimes certain individuals are considered to be the best at what they do. And today we're going to break down the reign of Justinian I, the one who is believed to be the best ruler the Byzantines ever had. Not only that, the last true Roman. Hit it. Justinian I, who ruled Byzantium from 527 to 565 AD, is often considered to be the best Byzantine emperor ever, and one who truly restored the old glory of ancient Rome through the Byzantines. When Justinian inherited the throne, Byzantium was undergoing a series of different catastrophes. In fact, if you think 2020 is bad, you should hear some of the stuff that they went through during this time. In about 530 or so, Byzantium underwent a period of extreme cold. While the sun shined, it didn't provide enough heat, and there was also a weird stench of toxic gas throughout the city of Constantinople. There was also a number of different volcanic eruptions that affected numerous areas that produced food for the Byzantines. This might have also impacted the fact that the temperature changed so much. 10 years later, a plague breaks out in Constantinople and kills a large amount of the population. And 10 years after that, there's a major earthquake in the Mediterranean Sea, which actually triggers a tsunami. This tsunami would eventually hit the city of Alexandria in Egypt, which was a major city in the Byzantine Empire, responsible for a large amount of food production. The tsunami rocked the Byzantine Empire, and this is early on in Justinian's reign. So very early on, he's challenged and has a number of crises to respond to. But overall, one theme was clear. Justinian believed that so much of this was happening because Byzantium had lost its way. A series of weak rulers and ineffective rulers had brought all this calamity to Byzantium. Justinian's solution was to get back to the way the Roman Empire used to do it. He intended on bringing back authoritarian, autocratic rule. 100% of Byzantium would be in his control. And through that, he could bring back Rome's glory to the Byzantine world. And that's what Justinian is obsessed with throughout his entire reign. Image and legacy were vital to Justinian. He wanted to be remembered as the greatest, so he surrounded himself with some of the best military minds, as well as uniting with the church in order to make Byzantium more like Rome. It also helped that Justinian had the support of his wife, Theodora, who was equally ambitious. Theodora was not born of royalty. She was unlike most queens in world history. Her humble origins saw her as the daughter of the keeper of the bears. Yeah, it's as baller as it sounds. The dude ran the bears in the Hippodrome and took care of them and trained them. Yet being in the lower class, Theodora didn't have a lot of opportunities. So because of that, she turned to some R-rated activities in order to earn some money. And these activities eventually brought her into the presence of Justinian. And Justinian was so enamored with her that he ended up making her his wife. So when it comes to Theodora, you can describe her story like this. Man, I ain't saying she a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no bro. Yeah, she's kind of in it for the money. And the power, and the title, and the status, and all of that, like most rulers would be. And it is truly a rags to riches story, but she does have a lot of influence on Justinian. Many believe that she is the reason Justinian pushed for the greatness that he did. But in order to rule like a Roman, Justinian had to make some changes, including the now famed Justinian's Code, a new set of laws that actually took old Roman laws and rewrote them for the Byzantines. It also included a handbook and series of rulings from former Roman judges to use as precedent in future cases. Justinian also believed that in order to truly rule as a Roman would, And for Byzantium to return to the glory of old Rome, he had to regain all of the territory that the Roman Empire once ruled. And that's exactly what he does through ambitious military campaigns. Justinian's general Belisarius carried out a series of campaigns from 537 to 562 in which the Byzantine Empire attempted to reconquer the old Roman Empire. This featured wars against the Goths, the Italians, and the Persians. These efforts were mostly successful because by 562, Justinian now ruled not only most of the Eastern Roman Empire, but also added territory in North Africa, southern Spain, and almost all of Italy to the now massive Byzantine Empire. It was truly almost the exact size of the Roman Empire. While the campaigns were mostly successful, Justinian did hit a roadblock in the Middle East against the Sassanid Persian Empire. Combined with the resources and troops necessary to conquer that which he conquered, Justinian significantly drained the treasury and manpower of the Byzantine Empire. But for Justinian, he had achieved his goal. He was ruling the Roman Empire. And Justinian took other steps within Constantinople itself to make it more like Rome. One example was the addition of the Hippodrome, a massive racetrack for chariot races built in the center of Constantinople. Justinian certainly subscribed to the old Roman theory of bread and circuses. Give the people food, give them entertainment, and they will love you forever. And very quickly, the people were hooked on chariot racing. It was medieval NASCAR, but probably way more entertaining than NASCAR could ever be. And just like in any sporting event, the people of Constantinople found the racers and teams that they supported. In fact, there were a number of different teams in Constantinople that represented the racers. The teams were all based on different colors. So you had the greens, the reds, the blues, etc. And citizens became intense supporters of these different colors. And not just because of the racers or their success in the Hippodrome. No, the chariot teams also came to represent different political issues, religious issues. Gangs were often created in support of them. It's very similar to what happens in many European soccer teams. So in many ways, chariot racing transcended the sport itself. And yes, it was a distraction for the people, but very quickly, it became a bigger issue. In addition to being a place of competition, the Hippodrome also became a place of protest of political issues. And in this case, after Justinian's conquest, the people of Constantinople were feeling the strain of the drained treasury and the famine going on throughout the empire. And those opinions were quickly voiced within the Hippodrome. This all started in 531 when members of the blue and green teams reacted a little negatively to a loss in a race. Some things were said, some punches were thrown, and some people were murdered. Well, the guilty parties were also taken prisoner because of their actions and were executed for said actions. But some of them escaped and were protected by a mob of blue and green supporters. This showed that there was increased tensions within the Hippodrome and that violence was becoming an answer within that setting. Obviously, Justinian was becoming a little bit nervous. While his attention was focused on his continued war efforts against the Persians, now it seemed the Hippodrome was fostering insurrection and potential rebellion against his reign. Over the next year, Justinian also increased taxes to pay for more of his military pursuits, and this only increased tensions. So in 532, while much of the city was gathered in the Hippodrome to watch a race, Justinian was the focus. Rather than watching the race, they were hurling projectiles at him in his box and finding ways to insult him. The chanting was not just confined to the Hippodrome. It grew into a massive riot and protest that spilled into the streets of Constantinople with the intent to go and burn down the palace. It seemed like this was an opportunity to try and overthrow Justinian. And Justinian himself was about to flee. But it's believed that Theodora convinced him to stay and deal with the matter. Supposedly, she said to him, those that have worn the crown should never survive its loss. And even more insulting, how could an emperor ever become a fugitive? Whether or not that's true, Justinian did react to the growing protests. He commanded the military to surround the protesters and funnel them back into the Hippodrome where he could better address them. But Justinian never appeared. Rather, once the people were confined within the Hippodrome, the military reacted and killed the protesters. The Nika Riots, as they are called, resulted in the deaths of 30,000 protesters in the Hippodrome, but more importantly showed Justinian's willingness to flex his muscle in order to protect his legacy. Whew. That is one wild sporting event. I mean, imagine if something like that happened in one of our sporting events today. Now, I know sports have been used in our time to push political agendas. Look at what's happening in the NFL with the flag and some of the other ongoing issues. I don't think we've ever seen anything like that. I mean, maybe the closest thing we have is the Malice in the Palace. Is that before your time? You don't know the Malice in the Palace? Oh, this is great. Okay, great's probably the wrong word. In a 2004 NBA game between the Pistons and the Pacers, a fight broke out between Ben Wallace and Ron Artest. While that may seem like nothing, it escalated when a fan threw a drink onto Ron Artest and he ran into the stands, and a fight broke out between players and fans. Yeah, true story. I mean, there should be a 30 for 30 about that. While Justinian had protected his throne, there was still a question about his legacy. Because of what he had just done in killing so many of his own civilians, Justinian was no longer loved. Yet he did show the shrewd decision-making necessary to maintain the public peace. But Justinian again is concerned about his legacy. He wants to be the last Roman. He wants to be the greatest Byzantine emperor. So he decided to build something that he could leave behind, something that could literally cement his legacy as the greatest. What would be constructed is one of the greatest churches in all of world history. Justinian spared no expense in building the Hagia Sophia, the official church of all of Christendom here in Constantinople, the heart of Christianity, improving on Roman architecture by building a dome and arches larger than any other attempted before. The Hagia Sophia simultaneously preserved the Christian legacy and the Roman legacy that Justinian wanted to maintain. The interior was masterfully decorated with gold, jewels, relics from around the world, icons of Jesus and other biblical figures. Hagia Sophia, which means the Church of Holy Wisdom, was certainly the greatest church in all of Christendom. And it was Justinian who built it. Now there was a physical, lasting reminder of who Byzantium's greatest ruler was. Much of Justinian's life was chronicled by the Byzantine historian Procopius. Procopius tells us that upon the completion of the Hagia Sophia, Justinian walked in and marveled at his new church. And he famously looked into the heavens and shouted, "O Solomon, I have surpassed you." You see, a house of worship to this extent had never been constructed before, with the exception of Solomon's temple. The Hagia Sophia was the center of Christianity, the greatest monument to God. And Justinian had ensured that it was he who would be remembered for its construction. By tying together the Roman architecture with the theology and imagery of the Christian church, Justinian had left a lasting legacy. And the Hagia Sophia has forever been synonymous with Constantinople and the Byzantine Empire. And it will remain so for centuries. But the question remains, was Justinian truly Byzantium's greatest? Many would say yes. Nobody did it better than Justinian did. He expanded the empire to its height by far, dealt with revolution effectively, and he left a monument not only to himself, but to the God that is glorified throughout all of Byzantine history. And yet, through it all, there is obviously a selfishness to Justinian. There is a shrewdness. There's a willingness to dip into some evil in order to create some good. Is that worth it? That's a question you have to answer with your worldview. But walking the line of morality between good and bad, expanding an empire through military conquest, providing bread and circus for the people, and leaving behind monumental architecture, well, that's something that was definitely true for the Romans too. So in that sense, Justinian ruled as a Roman. And it's clear that after Justinian's reign in Byzantium, there will never be another ruler like him. In fact, after Justinian's death, Byzantium begins a steady decline, just like Rome once did. It will never be as large as it was under Justinian. In fact, it will be constantly invaded by those who seek to take Byzantium's wealth for its own, to gain Constantinople as a strategic location. It will also be the center of major religious conflicts, unparalleled throughout history. And so while Justinian brought Byzantium to its height, there is still more to this story. Byzantium and Constantinople will be at the center of world events for the next few centuries. But that is a story for another day. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.